of shadow. The gift of the warrior is to perceive that which cannot be seen. The spirit of the warrior is to strike in a single moment. The destiny of the warrior.
Hello and welcome to Dead Games No One Played, a show dedicated to those video games that died before their time, as in before the release date. Today we have another game from Blizzard, and again one that actually some people have played, people that were at certain trade shows like E3 or the Tokyo Game Show and a few others from around 2002 to 2005. Starcraft Ghost. Now this isn't the first game that Blizzard has cancelled, and it isn't the last of them. We all know that Titan died a few years ago, and there are plenty more titles that the company never officially announced which went the way of the dodo, the adorable dodo. Starcraft Ghost was conceived in an age very different from what we know today. This was when the PlayStation 2 came to fruition. This was the era where console gaming sort of dominated, because let's face it, the PlayStation 2 was a kick-ass system. It had amazing support and it is still the best-selling console and DVD player ever made. No, really. The best-selling DVD player is the PlayStation 2. It outsold every other brand of DVD player. This would be around the year 2000, and Blizzard back then was not doing too shabby. Starcraft was a big hit, Diablo 2 was a big hit, but these were PC games. In an era where stores tended to put PC games not necessarily in the front, more to the back or the basement, where someone took up the stairs, turned off the lights, and stuffed them in a filing cabinet behind a locked door with a sign on it that read, "Beware of Leopard." And yet Blizzard was doing fine in that age. But it could do better. It could have a video game on the PlayStation 2. And that's what they set out to do. Not themselves, actually. Blizzard was not as big back then as it is now. And it did not have an infinite amount of resources at its disposal. People were already working around the clock, they were in crunch mode for months, even years, so building a team to create a brand new game, that was gonna be hard. So Blizzard took a gamble, and they contracted Nihilistic Software, a company made by LucasArts veterans and even a few Blizzard veterans as well. Their objective was to make a console video game, and what better place to set one than in their most recent big new IP. Not Diablo. Even though Diablo 2 was a success, they had already tried to do Diablo on consoles with the first one, Diablo 1 on PS1. It did not go well. This had to be a game built from the ground up for consoles and not a port. And so was born Starcraft Ghost, the game that introduced us to Nova, the video game character that undoubtedly has the nicest pair of goggles ever made in a video game. And it was to be a stealth-based game. After all, Nova was envisioned as a ghost, as one of the most powerful units in the game, but one whose power didn't come necessarily from direct force, but through intelligent usage and abilities. The vision was that you would play a unit from StarCraft in a battlefield, in a map from StarCraft, from the perspective of that unit. In that sense, it is akin to what Westwood did with Command & Conquer Renegade in 2002. That game gets a lot of flack for being a bit repetitive, but honestly it is actually kinda great, because it actually did what Starcraft Ghost set out to do, and they were both being developed kind of at the same time. That game really made you feel like you were a simple unit in the battlefield. Though technically you were a commando, and commandos were supreme badasses even in the single player. But back to Starcraft Ghost. The idea really took off. Having just one unit crawling through Zerg-filled trenches, infiltrating Protoss motherships, sneaking aboard battle cruisers, entering the buildings that you would build in StarCraft. sometimes even piloting some of the vehicles you would have in the game, in the RTS like the vulture bike, and having access to all the abilities of a ghost, even more actually with thermal imaging, and to the weapons of some other characters. You had assault rifles, you had grenades, you had shotguns, you even had flamethrowers. There were flame bats in there you could kill with your bare hands even. You had sneaking, you had bases, you had the core of what could have been a great game. And Nihilistic Software worked on it for 2 years until Blizzard finally revealed it to the world. And the world liked it a lot. Quite a lot. And everybody was just wondering one thing: when can I play it? When can I have this game? When can I have more of StarCraft? When can I see this world, this amazing universe you've crafted through a different perspective? Because that's what Starcraft Ghost was. It was a means to expand the universe of StarCraft in ways that the RTS could not do. It couldn't have such a large focus on storytelling, such a large focus on characters, because they were tiny units, and well, it did have cinematics, but you could do more things in Starcraft Ghost. More things with the story. What exactly was that story? They sort of didn't actually figure that part out, but it was supposed to be there. But things sort of didn't go quite well. Now, Blizzard wasn't at its first rodeo when it came to publishing the games of others. It did the same thing with Condor and their Diablo game, which proved a big success. But this time around, Blizzard sort of didn't really do a good job. Mostly because the people at Blizzard would constantly play new games. They would play Metal Gear, they would play Splinter Cell, they would play Halo, they would play something and say, hey, you know what? Starcraft Ghost could use this feature, and Nihilistic would do it. Then they would do it well, for the most part. And then they'd want another feature added. Okay, new feature, we're on it. And another, and another. Until we sort of got the sense that Blizzard didn't actually have that good a grasp on the concept of Starcraft Ghost. Things really started going downhill by the time that Blizzard started thinking about, hey, maybe this game should have multiplayer in it. By that time, it sort of evolved from being just a stealth game to a more action game with some stealth in it, and the result became a confusing mess. One that is, for the most part, Blizzard's fault, on account of them not really giving any cohesive direction to the studio or letting them do what they knew would be best. There was one way to fix that. They dropped Nihilistic Software. Probably not the best way to fix that, but they did it. In their place came a different studio, Swinging Ape, one that was actually purchased by Blizzard in 2005 for the sole purpose of finishing development on Starcraft Ghost. Starcraft Ghost at this point was not the same game from the year 2002. Nihilistic created a single-player stealth action game. They were good at making big, complicated single-player games. They had just made, prior to Starcraft Ghost, Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. And as much as the dialogue between Kristoff and Aniska would drag on and on, oh my god, in that game, it was good as a single-player game. But again, Blizzard did not want a single-player focused game at this point anymore. It wanted something else. It wanted multiplayer. So that's what Swinging Ape did. It added a large multiplayer component to the game, one that was class-based, one where you would not play just one character, one ghost. You would play a plethora of characters from StarCraft. You would play Marines, you would play Firebats, you would play all sorts of stuff, and you would have more vehicles, you would have objectives. It essentially looked a lot like the multiplayer mode of Command & Conquer Renegade, though I don't actually remember if it had the resource gathering component. Lacking that aspect, it would probably be closer to something like, well, I would say Tribes, but Tribes didn't have as well-defined classes. Maybe something like PlanetSide on a tiny scale, or Team Fortress with vehicles. And this was before Team Fortress 2, so yeah, Overwatch gets a pass for being inspired by Starcraft Ghost and not just by Team Fortress 2. Development was going well, but there came another small problem. This was the year 2005. Do you know what happened in 2005? Well, the Xbox 360 was released, and Blizzard was working on a game developed for the PS2, the GameCube, and the original Xbox. It was using technology first developed around the year 2000. It was late. It was very late. Now granted, initially it was late for some good reasons. Before Blizzard started with the let's add everything we see in the game, they focused on quality and then tried to cram everything in it until it sort of became a different kind of game. It had no direction basically for years, so there was really no sort of delay in its production. There was no end to the production. So instead of being released earlier when this technology would have actually made sense, it was now on the cusp of a new platform age with technology that would be laughed off stage. Because when you put Starcraft Ghost next to Gears of War, you look at them and you see that these two are not alike. One of these does not belong here in terms of graphical fidelity. So the company had two options. One, they could spend a lot of time and a lot of resources to retrofit this game to new technology, to Xbox 360 technology, or they could abandon it. In 2005, Blizzard still had the hope that Starcraft Ghost would get made. They even brought in a statue of Nova at BlizzCon 2005. They had playable demos of the game. They gave away mouse pads with Starcraft Ghost at BlizzCon 2005. An event that existed primarily because Blizzard was now the most profitable game studio ever in the history of the industry. Blizzard had released World of Warcraft, and it instantly became a huge hit, a massive hit, one that required a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of people to keep running. There was no room to retrofit Starcraft Ghost, and at this point Blizzard no longer needed the console market to increase profits. All it had to do was add more World of Warcraft servers, and the money kept rolling in. Now, the project itself technically wasn't cancelled for a long while, but no one was actually working on it. There was still hope that maybe they're gonna port it to a new console, to a new platform with new technology, but as the years went by, as a decade went by, that hope faded into oblivion. Nova herself would be made part of the main StarCraft canon with her own book series and her appearances in the StarCraft 2 video game and its expansions. She in the end got her own storyline with the Nova mission pack, which doesn't really compensate for the lack of a full 3D action stealth game with her, but it's the closest thing we'll ever get. Of course, again, even though this is dead games no one played, some people have played it on those trade shows, and who knows, maybe if we're in luck, someone's gonna leak a functional copy of a PS2 build of the game. After all, it happened with Lord of the Clans, but that sort of involved a bunch of Russians, and, well, this is just Blizzard. And Blizzard tends to not share much about its old, discarded, abandoned, and long-buried projects. Because they see them as failures, they see them as not being up to their standards, and by existing, by allowing the public to see them for what they were, they believe it will lessen the reputation of the studio. And to a point, yeah, they're probably right, because people on the internet often don't understand things like, this wasn't ready, this was in alpha, this did not represent the complete game yet, but everyone else would sure appreciate it.
Let's roll!
Thank you for watching this show. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of our other videos and maybe sharing them or giving a thumbs up if you feel like it. And if you really liked what you saw, please check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you could help us make much better shows and get some rewards in the process. Or you could consider buying my book called Tale of Doom. Volume 1 is out now and available for just $2. And as always, if you thought it was horrible, you know where to find me and complain about it.